And so when we are looking at this whole thing about use of uh, artificial intelligence for defense, attack, etc., कहानी बहुत पुरानी है चोर सिपाही की. So chore as well as sipahi, they all use same technologies, same type of tools. It's just a matter who is ahead in the game. Okay? तो उस हिसाब से कहानी उतनी नई नहीं है. But at the same time, what happens is that the use of Gen AI or AI in general nowadays, the speed at which things are happening, the scale at which things are happening, that's something which becomes extremely important for us to look at. And from that perspective, we have a set of experts here to sort of take different takes on this particular domain and this realm as it is evolving. Now, since we have limited time and there are 6 of my co-panelists here, what we have decided is that I've requested each of them to sort of focus on one particular aspect rather than people getting into very generic stuff that way. And we thought that might be much more useful and meaningful here for everybody here. So let me start with Pawan. So, yeah, maybe you just start off with my. Yeah. Now, we also have within this panel, if you see, so there are 3 people from the insurance industry, both life as well as general insurance. We also have a representation from travel industry, from others also. So from that perspective, let's start from the regulated sector itself. Now, wherever you have a sector regulator, for example, in case of insurance, we do have IRDAI. For banking, we have RBI. For telecom, there's a TRAI, etc. So the sector regulator, it's not that any industry is operating without any regulation, because inevitably there are regulations, at least horizontal ones that do apply everywhere. But these are, I'm talking about vertical sort of regulations here. So, Pawan, so how do you ensure cybersecurity and data protection both while you are deploying new technology? So obviously, I mean, as new technologies keep coming, we keep on sort of trying, deploying, and then of course scaling up. And how do the customers sort of adopt or do not adopt those type of things? So what's your take? And the other request that I have to all my co-panelists is to please limit their interventions to about 4-5 minutes, okay? And the timer is there, so for everybody to see. And because then we can have a little bit more of Q&A. Thank you.
Sure. First of all, good afternoon, everyone. I hope people are not feeling sleepy. I will still be on time, so don't worry. Disclaimer first, all the views expressed here are own, should not be considered as an organization representation. So when it comes to cybersecurity and data protection, it goes hand in hand. Deepak already talked about it. चोर और बचाने वाले दोनों सेम ही मेथोडोलॉजी यूज़ करते हैं, but difference सिर्फ इतना है कि चोरों के पास पैसा ज़्यादा होता है, CISOs को उतना पैसा मिलता नहीं है आज की डेट में इंडस्ट्री में. So we can't play around with multiple tools. We have limited set of tools with which we need to work upon.
और चोर जो है वो reinvest भी करते रहते हैं.
Yeah, आज की डेट में तो ये एक organized crime बन चुका है, and that industry is much more regulated than any other industry, I would say, where there is a trust and there is belief that they will get something and they will distribute equally among themselves as well. तो कोई किसी की पाई खाएगा नहीं इसमें. So yeah, coming back to the topic on the data protection and cybersecurity, when it comes to looking at the new technologies and deploying new technologies, both goes hand in hand, because data is not only the fuel for the organization, it is the real-time fuel for the organization. आज की डेट में वो नहीं है कि डेटा है आपके पास तो आप उसको एनालिटिक उस पर चला के आप कभी भी कुछ एक नया प्रोडक्ट निकाल दो और उसके अकॉर्डिंगली आप अपना बिजनेस रन कर सकते हो, न्यू मेथड्स या न्यू avenues बना सकते हो रेवेन्यू के. बट दिस इज द रियल टाइम डेटा, बिकॉज मार्केट इज चेंजिंग सो डायनामिकली दैट यू नीड टू have real time data to change your dynamics as well of the business. We see the new startup companies which are there, and they have how they have changed or shaped the country as of today. So when it comes to adopting a new technologies, there are certain things which definitely need to be looked at. Is first of all identifying the vulnerabilities. Before adopting it, you should look at it that what kind of vulnerabilities the product has. First, it should fit in your environment. Second, you should look at the vulnerabilities which are there. It should be vulnerability free. And you need to adopt the practice of the least privilege when adopting a new technology, because sometimes what happens is even we buy the new product, अगर आप Cisco का firewall दे दो, router दे दो, we keep the default as it is. I remember there was an event I was attending, and there was one case study presented by somebody from a cement company. They had a factory, there was a firewall which was there for almost 10-15 years. Then they realized that it has to be changed. And when the time came to change that, nobody remembers the password because the administrator था वो तो कब का नौकरी छोड़ के जा चुका था. And nobody knew क्या है. But eventually वो password administrator ही निकला जब उसको change करने गए. But that's the world we are living in. We are too dependent on people. Sometimes we don't keep the data or change the default credentials, and that's where the vulnerability comes into the picture. Then comes the data encryption. The way the world is changing, the API is being created, the APIs are getting adopted. The data which is getting exchanged between two organizations or within your function itself, different functions within the organization, they need to be encrypted. You need to ensure that the encryption has been inbuilt and that has been embedded and that has been tested when you're adopting a technology as well. Because that, if it is not encrypted, man-in-the-middle attack or the site attack, which Brijesh talked about in his session, can lead to different kind of a scenario, and you may have a compromised situation. That need to be looked at. End-to-end encryption of the transaction plays a very important role, and that need to be kept sacrosanct. Then comes the software updates. We generally tend to see that people still believe that N-1, N-2, N-3 they can live up to, but today even the N is not safe enough. So ensuring that it is up to date, it gets the important, at least the security updates get pushed here on the systems, and whichever software has been getting adopted should have the latest patches installed on that. That plays a very important role. I talked about the least privilege, but accordingly, with that, there is a subset of access control. The role-based access control has to be clearly thought through and have to be implemented within that. Otherwise, you will have a situation where people have over access, which will lead to the data leakage, and that will leave it to you in a different situation again. The data minimization plays a very important role, because when you are even doing a POC while adopting a new technology, it is very important that you look at the data which has been given for the POC environment itself. It should not be the real data on which you do the POC. You should do on a sampling basis and use a different data, which is the POC data, not the actual data of the customer where you do the POC. Anonymization and masking is also very important. Sorry?
Can you please quickly wrap up, because I just realized that the organizers have sort of shrunk our session from 40 minutes to 30 minutes.
Okay, sure. Compliance also plays a very important role, so I'll probably pick up only the important points now. So compliance, like Deepak talked about the regulatory requirements, so every regulator has drawn their guideline. Within IRDA, they have defined it as the technological access review, which needs to be done before adopting a technology, and there has to be a risk which has been associated with that, and we do a score, we give a score to that particular technology, and then only we adopt it and then implement within the organization. That needs to be done. And the most important thing which I wanted to focus upon is building human firewall. You need to build human firewall within the organization, because unless you educate people, you will still have a vulnerable environment, and the vulnerabilities will keep on flowing in. The data will get misused and will get circulated within the organization or outside the organization as well, if they don't know the importance of data. Why it is important? Because for finance data is important, but it is crucial for the organization. For HR, employee data is important, but for hackers, that's the fuel. For that, they will get money for that. And that's where people need to know that how that information can be stored here. So I'll stop here, Deepak.
Thanks, Pawan. And let me move on to Mayank now.
Yep.
So, for example, in the insurance sector itself, we have got, as I said earlier, we have got vertical regulator, IRDAI. At the same time, there are certain horizontal requirements. For example, under IT Act, then within IT Act, we have got certain rules, for example, for breach notifications, etc. And now DPDPA. In fact, earlier in the day, I was had a long discussion, which is, by the way, still continues somewhere else in Delhi, on DPDPA itself. And some of us have been sort of dealing with this whole thing about DPDPA, not since Puttaswamy, not even since 2010, actually since the 20th century. Because it was on 25th of July 1998 that the Union government at that point of time had said, and so it was a proper gazette notification, by the way, which said that we shall have a cybersecurity and a data protection framework within 6 months. And if that had been the case, by the eve of 26th of January in 99, which was the Republic Day, we should have had a data protection as well as cybersecurity framework. Cybersecurity strategy has been sort of in the making for some time now. Controversy is not over. Let's see where it goes now. And DPDPA, as I said, from 25th July 1998 till now, so it's been, I mean, a few days from now, it will be 18 months from the date of notification of the law itself. So, Mayank, how do you sort of manage this whole thing around vertical regulation and horizontal regulation? So let me just ask you to address on that aspect.
So
and yeah, and instead of 5 minutes, I would request you to limit it to 4 minutes, because we've got other colleagues also here. Okay.
So
all right, thanks.
good afternoon, everybody. So again, a disclaimer: the views are my personal. It's not a.
I think we should put that as a general disclaimer, so that everybody doesn't repeat.
So that
okay, thanks.
Puts up there. Okay. So I think see, your point is right when it comes to the regulator saying it across, or like say certain, for example, if I take certain requires 6 hours to report an incident, right? Now the DPDP Act or the DPDP rules draft which we have received, which says 72 hours to the board or whatsoever. Now again, that always remains a dilemma whether the rules that are there, need to report to IRDA within the given framework, how that framework will now fit into the rules. So obviously that will go as an input, I understand, to the regulator, but I think all these things has to be need to be, unified, so that, organization can take a critical approach. Okay, what is it that I need to do as an organization, so that there is no ambiguity? Because most of the times, because of this ambiguous nature, organizations who are, ethical will always strike, always in the, either side, and somebody will take a escape way out of it. Like, okay, it's ambiguity, I will take a call. So I think it's, to the regulator also, like, if they can give more clarity on certain sense, in which they already will be doing. So I think it will help entire industry to, follow it and do it. So that's my take overall, on the regulator side. And one last thing which I want to just mention in the interest of time, where, regulator will put all the efforts, maybe it's IRDA, RBI, SEBI or everyone. But it also depends on the organizations, how they take that, guidelines and everything seriously, because at the end it's a guideline and requirement, but at the end of the day it's the organization who is going to implement. So the seriousness also has to come from the board, from the management and everywhere, and that's where everybody can, get, I would say, alignment to the guidelines. That is what I feel.
Thanks, Mayank, for that. And let me now just move over to Sujoy. Okay. So, I mean, when you're looking at your mobility platform, so, okay, so they, of course, the promise is, of course, a safe ride, safe safar, as you call it, safar as in Urdu. And at the same time, I just want to check, like, how do you ensure that that the data as well as the people do not suffer, as in English, anything from related to data protection or cybersecurity type of challenges?
Good afternoon all. Thank you for inviting me here. See, you need to have a right balance between your application as well as your UX, that is user experience, and the security of that particular application product. So it's a combination of both. Cyber security, data security can't be an afterthought. It has to be baked from day one, from your design stage, and it has to be implemented and tested properly that everything is working fine. So when you come to the data protection, is that whenever you are, see, in this particular industry, you need to have a good, robust application, mobility applications where user can use it. The ease of use is very important. And apart from that, you need to have good access control, an authentication mechanism, as well as the monitoring mechanism, so that both the things goes hand in hand. So both the suffer has to be balanced. What you said, then only it will be a useful, and it's not going to damage your reputation or brand image or anything else.
Thanks. So Manoj, let me just ask you. So now, I mean, platforms like Eve's, My Trip, so there's a lot of interaction with multiple other parties. Okay, so whether it's airlines, it could be railways, buses, anything for that matter, or hotels, etc., tour operators, etc. So how do you sort of manage this whole thing around data, which, let's say somebody goes to Ease My Trip, submits that data, asks for this type of itinerary, etc., etc., and then how does you ensure that only the relevant data and not all the data that as a user one may have submitted goes to the respective partners or the vendors, so that there's a need which is fulfilled for which they do need the data, as Pawan had mentioned in terms of data minimization. So it is just the necessary and sufficient stuff that goes to them. That's one. And second, do you also use things like he mentioned about, for example, end-to-end encryption and other type of things, so that even if it is being sent only the minimum data, it remains secure and safe?
Thank you very much. As Deepak sir asking about the data security and data, what we are doing today. I tell you, travel technology is the last 20 years, 2 decades actually we are working on. And today, before going for data protection or cybersecurity, I must tell you, before doing, we have to handshake with the airline partner or GDS partner or hotel industry or you name it, any of the travel product. We're going to be a lot of due diligence. There are 2 points. One is physical, we're taking care of what exactly we have a compliance perspective. We have to share all the documents. Yes, we are handshake, a lot of due diligence, we have to do that. Then come to the technical part. When we talk about technical part, basically we are connecting with the API and we have a lot of regression testing before going live. So that's, before going live, we take care of the data protection, cybersecurity, whatever we have, sharing the data, online transfer, those things is tested and then we can go live. Now, when we talk about travel, so whether it is the airlines or hotel industry, we are connected real time today. We don't have a chance to have any, chance to get error. So let's say, for example, you are booking a flight or hotel. So we don't have a chance to, because we are connected to the payment gateway, we cannot verify in second chance this payment is done or not. So that's more important. What we are doing right now, in the fraction of second, the transaction goes up and you get a ticket online. So is it more important what data travel from one cloud to another cloud? This is the one. We have to take care of that before going live. Now second, which is very important, as far as customer information is concerned, what data we traveling from airlines to our portal and back to the customer. And back and forth data should be encrypted from whether in transit data or in whatever data we reside on data server, that should be protected and encrypted format. We have taken care of all those things. I would not name how do we encrypt it, but yes, we are doing that. And why? Because every quarter we have to go a lot of due diligence and certification, like say for example, compliance perspective, we talk about GDPR, we have 27,001, now we talk about DPDP. So these are things already in place, because when you're going to be a handshake with any partner, with the airline, this document is required before going to live. So I would say, yes, my industry is very, very mature and will take care of the customer data and protection of the customer data any point of time, because we are liable to, pay a lot of encrypted penalty. Thank you.
Thank you. So let me move to Amit. So when we are looking at, let's say, in terms of the topmost threats, okay, so what are those topmost threats and what are the top 2 most, let's say, what are the top two things that come to your mind in terms of responding and dealing with those type of challenges?
So
Let's have plenty since morning people have been talking about.
correct.
Yeah.
So, on a lighter note, the threats will never be technical. The threats will always come out of, what Pawan mentioned, that the human firewall. You can have $1 billion equipment, but there's somebody who'll create a server or create an FTP server and send out data. Or in another way, on a little serious note, the ransomware companies are willing to pay percentage of ransom to people to click on an executable that will come to them, through some kind of means. So the human firewall element is one of the most important thing. And even, we can talk about users who are using it, but the security folks themselves are at fault at a lot of times. And I keep repeating very often, and in my organization and my previous avatars, a fool behind a tool is still a fool. You can get any amount of infrastructure in place, but if you do not have the right capability to manage it, it is going to fail. The second thing is what we are seeing right now with cloud, AI. There is a rush in every organization to implement it. Everybody is jumping, and it becomes, kind of, unless your sales pitch or unless your product pitch does not say AI, you are not going to sell. So people are jumping to implement all the new technologies without understanding what needs to be done in managing them. In a very simplistic term, IT is nothing but a front end and a back end and a network in between. If you go back to first principles, you need to look at assuring that all these elements, through some kind of very simple threat modeling, that all these things are protected. And if you are able to protect them, your life will be very simple. But going on to the technology, AI, Mr. Brijesh mentioned a lot about that. Cloud computing is the second part. And the third part is the open source part, where people are creating malicious libraries. Everybody is going to GitHub, picking up something, using it. And that becomes, these three things, if they're more or less covered, in the present day threat scenario, most of them will be, kind of resolved. And companies would face less mayhem than what they are facing right now.
Let me move over to Rohit. So, what are the unique challenges and opportunities in the healthcare sector? Now, healthcare, of course, a lot of places around the world, healthcare data is regarded as a sensitive personal data. In India also, there was a proposal earlier, but we do not find that in the DPDPA. But nevertheless, it is still regarded as a sensitive personal data. So there's a lot of digitization and digitalization which is happening in the healthcare sector. For example, you can see a lot of digital x-rays. Even government hospitals, you are getting, let's say, appointment which is online, payments online. So except that, yes, recently I saw at one particular government hospital that the appointment was online, but payment of ₹1 had to be made at the counter. Okay, and that's what was creating an hour and a half long queue over there. But in this type of scenario, one of the major challenges is you got different vendors of equipment, whether it's diagnostic, whether it's surgical and other type of things. And they are, of course, using a whole lot of digital stuff. But how do you ensure that, number one, that what the data coming from one is talking to the other one, that's one, within the single organization or a single entity, but also across the system. So for example, if somebody goes to Safdarjung Hospital and just across the road, if they have to go to AIMS, how do we ensure that they don't have to lug around all those heavy CT scans and X-rays and everything and all the prescriptions, etc.? That's one. At the same time, how do we also ensure that there's sufficient data protection for the people who are going to be impacted? And of course, within the healthcare sector, we have seen whether it was AIMS a couple of years back in India, or whether it was NHS that had seen massive ransomware attacks a few years back in UK and elsewhere. How do you sort of work with these things?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for posing this question to me. Being a cybersecurity specialist, what I understand is that, with the use of AI and digitalization in the health sector, obviously there is a lot of improvement in the efficiency. that we see. At the same time, we also see that, it is bringing out a lot of good fruits in terms of informed decision by the health practitioners, and whereby ultimately the benefit goes to the patient in terms of treatment. There are high rate of success that we can expect. Because, these AI and data-based information will help you diagnose the problem in a much better manner. But the biggest challenge, as you have pointed out, is the integration. There is no formal standardization of data in the health sector that we've seen, at least in India. There is no stringent regulation like HIPAA, which is at least implemented in the Indian continent. We've seen it elsewhere, but not in India. And hence, from my perspective, what I see that these informations are stored in various hospitals, in various health sectors, like, we go to a pathological lab, we give our information there, we go to a hospital, there are a lot of information that is residing, but there's no proper integration which has happened. And that's where the biggest challenge that appears in front of all of us. It's a big challenge that how do we standardize it? The best way to standardize it, the answer to this is that we should have a classification platform in the system which is not manual driven. Since we are talking of AI, we should use AI in the manner as if it's a human brain, which is able to understand the content residing in the information. It should not be manual, that we are manually going to classify any health information or a patient data. It should not happen like that. The only solution that appears to me is automation, complete automation, no manual intervention, wherein use AI to read the content, understand it, that what sort of information it is, how it is correlated across the system, and there should be a standard format which can be adopted by all the organizations in the health sector. There should be a common forum which can come out with the data and information residing in their system, and with this common forum you can devise a system which can automatically classify all sort of structured or unstructured data residing in the health system. This is the only solution which comes to my mind as of now. However, it requires a lot of research and development in the field of health sector to avoid challenges of, I think, ethical issues and sanctity of the information which is being used by AI regarding a patient. Because, I do not know whether I have given my consent or not, but my very personal health-related information is being used by the health sector to get some information. It can be very personal, related to my disease, which I would not allow them to be used. So there are a lot of ethical and moral concerns related to it, which will remain as it is, and this will require some long time to mitigate these challenges.
Thanks. So I just want to say here two things. Number one, I mean, perhaps, for example, whether it is a regulated sector like insurance and healthcare, etc., or for that matter others, as far as reporting is concerned of cybersecurity incidents, data breach notifications, etc., one of the bigger challenges is somewhere else also, by the way. सबकी templates अलग-अलग हैं. Okay? So, किसी में होगा, what's your first name, what's your second name, address, etc. Okay? And so if you see different guidelines, now let's take a specific example. Suppose you are an insurance company that's in health insurance, okay? And it could also be a critical infrastructure information, so under NCIIPC. So we have to report something to NCIIPC. You may also have to report something to IRDAI. You may also have to report to CERT anyway, because that's a horizontal regulation anyway there. Now, even if none of these things sort of get standardized to the extent that we are expecting in terms of timelines, etc., the bigger challenge is this. There's a limited bandwidth in terms of whether it's a CISO, whether you have compliance team and communications team and others. There's a fire going on, so you're firefighting there. You also have at the same time the obligation for these statutory reportings. अगर उसको भी हम थोड़ा simplify कर दें कि okay, let's create a superset of these reportings and have a common clearing house where you report, and there you can say, fine, I am in such and such this category, and from there the respective data can easily be transmitted to the respective agencies for their respective actions. And this was something that I actually wrote a couple of months back in an article for Center for International Governance and Innovation in Canada. So basically this, that fine, you may have different regulations and there's a need for there. But at the same time, there's still an opportunity for us to look at how do we streamline some of these things. The second thing is, and I do hope that all of your organizations and all of us sitting here are seriously looking at things like the framework from METI that has come out on AI governance in terms of responding to those, in terms of the draft DPDPA rules, for which again the deadline is very shortly coming as of now. That's the deadline. So because एक बार वो rules आ गए, then you can keep on crying that okay, ये, this I can do, this I cannot do. I'm not saying even if you say that okay, this rule should be changed, they will be changed. But at least there's an opportunity right now to please look at those rules and participate in those discussions, because this investment will be much more meaningful right now than ruminating about some of these fallouts that might happen later. I can see, yes, the time's up here on the screen it shows, but just like our predecessors, I'm also taking a little liberty on behalf of this panel, and I would request each of the panelists now to quickly, in about 20 seconds or so, convey maybe in a few words, what is it that you would recommend that people should look at in terms of using new technologies rather than just as a new shiny tool or a new shiny toy, little bit more thoughtfully. Thank you. Let me start on this side this time. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So basically now we already implemented AI. I mean,
let's come very short responses.
Okay.
Yeah.
To be honest, AI we using very effectively in terms of data security and privacy, and any kind of vulnerabilities find we entire the ecosystem, we identify and we mitigate those things.
I would say keep it simple. Run a business impact analysis or a risk assessment before implementing, before adopting new technology. In case any your assessment gave any kind of risk, mitigate that and go live.
I think I'll stick to what I said earlier. Don't be enamored by new technologies. Stay patient. Be part of the journey as to what needs to be implemented. When we build a house, we look at security as well. We do not just build a house. So implement or embed security from grounds up. Otherwise, the house is going to collapse.
Or at least buggled.
I think use technology, but well managed by a skilled workforce.
I think it's, if it's technology from the partner, I would say have a partner thoroughly checked from the supply chain attack. And if it's in-house build, have all the mechanisms to identify those. So
Thank you.
Yeah. Satark rahein, surakshit rahein. That's what I say.
Thank you. And with this, let me call an end to this particular session. I hope that this was useful to all of you, as it was at least useful to me. Thanks a lot.